you wanting to pick the perfect pantograph for your next quilt? Then you're going to want to stay tuned today for all the customer quilts I have piled up, and you can see what pantographs I picked for them. Hi friends, welcome back. My name is Tammy Ernest for those of you who are new, and I am a long arm quilter. And here on my channel I like to share customer finishes as well as my own personal projects that I've been working on throughout the week. I do put out a video every week as long as there's no grandbabies being born. But I'm back this week with a load of customer quilts, and I have some progress on my own personal quilting as well. So I told you in last week's video that I am going to do the Peaceful Baskets Quilt Along with Fat Quarter Shop. This is through the Sew Sampler box. And I also told you that my fabric kit was on its way, and it has arrived. So Peaceful Baskets is a quilt along. You have to be in, you don't have to, but if you receive the Sew Sampler box, the monthly subscription box that Fat Quarter Shop puts out, then you get, each month you get the pattern for the block of the month. You can also purchase these separate if you want. If you don't like all the other goodies in the box, you can do this separately. But I do subscribe to the Sew Sampler box. That's something I pay for on my own. It's not sent to me free, anything. I just like the box, and so I am enjoying this quilt along. And if you remember last year, I joined in on the pressed flowers one, and that one I just used fabrics from my stash. I am still deciding on how to, what fabrics to finish that in. I have all my blocks done. I just need to do the piecing of the whole top, but I'm starting on this one. So this one uses Shoreline by Camille Ross-Gelly, and I did receive my fabric kit. You can purchase this from the Fat Quarter Shop. Aren't those lovely fabrics? So Shoreline are blue, they're florals, they're blues, light blues, some green in there, some straight line. I like that too. Love the colors, and even some polka dots. So the fabric kit comes with everything you need to piece the blocks. And then I also ordered the backing set. I did not bring that with me down here today, but I ordered all of those so that I can do this exactly as the pattern shows. So I'm not going to show the pattern because it does have all of the cutting and things on the front of it, so I'm just showing you this card here. But I am enjoying this, one, because I love the colors, I love baskets, I love the whole theme of the project. I also am enjoying having the called for fabrics, so all I have to do is pull those out. No decisions on my part have to be made. I just pull out the correct fabric and cut it and piece it together. So I am enjoying that part. Sometimes it does get a little tedious, of like I did last year, of swapping fabrics out every time, and so I'm enjoying just sewing. So let me show you my first block. So this is block number 1. It does finish at 17.5 by 17.5, so it's a very large block, which is going to be really nice because then it's going to finish into a nice large quilt. Now, when you do purchase the fabric kit, you do receive the setting instructions. I'm not going to spoil any surprises though and show you that, but I do have those already, so I know what the final quilt is going to look like. This block was fairly easy to make. You know, you've got some half square triangles. It wasn't too difficult, and you are joining these pieces on the side, so a little bit of a bias piecing there, but I really think this is darling. Love the fabrics. Here's another blue polka dot. I didn't show you that when I was flipping through the fabrics there, but they are just delightful. I really like this. So last year's quilt along was done on point. This one you can tell the blocks are set straight, so not having to deal with that part of it, but this is a lot of fun. I was watching Kimberly Jolly. I think it was her cross-stitch video from this week, but someone asked her whether there was going to be a sticker like I showed you last week that I put on the back of my laptop, and someone asked her if there was going to be one for every block that was put out, and she said no. But she did say that maybe they'll do a sticker each year if you participate in the quilt along, and I like that idea. Then I could have them all across the back of my laptop and show, you know, kind of like a badge of honor that I finished this quilt top. So I think that's a lot of fun. So there's my first block of the Peaceful Baskets. The other thing I wanted to show you this week is my temperature quilt. So I have the first 3 months done and all joined together. So let me show you just as a repeat. That is January. January has 31 days, so you do have a tree next to the January block for the 31st weather. The temperature, I'm doing high temperatures. I'm using all Essex linen. I am using triangles on a roll. I will say that triangles on a roll, this is the first time I've used them. I've always done traditional half square triangles just by joining, layering one fabric on top of the other, stitching on either side of the diagonal line. I think triangles on a roll has a place in something like this where you're making multiple blocks in the same colors. If you are swapping different ones all the time, I don't see that triangles on a roll is going to help you, because I wouldn't want to just cut one little square of triangles on a roll and put those on one little piece of fabric and do it. I think that's going to be a little tedious and time consuming. I would rather just do it where I'm layering 2 fabrics together. But in this quilt along, because I need multiple colorways of every color, not multiple colorways, I need multiple blocks of each colorway. I'm using white on the bottom as 1/2, and I'm using all the different fabrics that I have picked for all the different gradations of weather changes. And so I need multiple blocks in each color, and so I think it works really well. And I'm able to, I didn't bring that down either, but I have a fat quarter bundle of the Essex linen, and to use the triangles on a roll, what I did is I cut my fat quarter piece. I cut it the length, the 22 inches, and about 7 inches wide, and then I cut enough triangles on a roll paper to fit within that amount, and then I layered a white linen with the colored linen that I'm using, put that the triangle paper on top of that, and then stitched all the way through that. So I'm getting that many half square triangles that I need, and then I just file them away, pull them out when I work on the next month of blocks. So I think the triangle paper works well if you need multiple pieces of the same colorway. If you're just doing, one-offs, or you only need a couple, or you're swapping different colors back and forth, I don't see that triangles on a roll is going to save you much time. It is very precise. You have to cut your blocks right on those lines of the paper. Otherwise, because when you press that open, or you press one side back, it gives you the exact size of your half square triangle, and the only thing you have to clip off is the little dog ears that are there. So you do need to be precise in cutting. I do use a ruler and a rotary cutter when I am cutting those the triangle paper. Once I've sewn it onto the fabrics and I'm cutting them apart, I do use a rotary cutter. I try to keep it very straight, because that is your block. There is no trimming it down, so you'll want to be so it is very precise, but you have to be precise too. It's not just magic there. So your cutting needs to be perfect, your pressing needs to be spot on. So in some ways I kind of like just layering 2 fabrics together, pressing them open, and then trimming it down. It's a little more extra step. So I think it's best just to decide what you like to do. Would you prefer to create it a little larger and trim it down, take that little bit of extra time, or do you prefer, the preciseness of the paper, and that you're cutting and your pressing is precise, and so you can do it. I think there's room for both ways. You're going to have to decide, maybe project by project, which one you prefer to do. So that's January. And February. Now February, because this year there were 29 days. Each house contains 30 days in it, so they chose just to put just to put a little brown square. It could have gone anywhere. They chose it right here, which would have been day 8. It didn't really matter where it was put at, just to fill in a space. And then March is right next to that one. And March has 31 days, so there is a tree next to that one. So 31 day, this is the temperature within that 5 degrees. You're just using that color fabric for the tree, which is kind of cool, because you can see how the trees even change. So that's the first row, January, February, and March. and I do have my April block done as well. So the highlight of April here was Eclipse Day, and it was also on the 8th, April the 8th. And so I had some viewers ask me what I was going to do different or special for Eclipse Day. So what I did was chose some fabrics. These are cotton, they're not even linen, but just a couple cotton fabrics, and you can see what I did. One is a little dark. It's actually a very dark blue with just some spots on it that kind of look like stars. And then the yellow print that I used down below does have some stars on it just to represent Eclipse Day on there. Now, this got me to thinking, because this is a year-long quilt-along, I've got a house for each month of the year, and Eclipse Day was a highlight in April, but that's not the only highlight in our year. It is weather related, and these are weather blocks, and so I can see why you know, it's important maybe to change that one because it was weather related. But now thinking about it, it's like there are other major events in our life, in our family life going on in 2024. So in April, we had a grandbaby born, and it would have been the next day after, no, it would have been 2 days after. He was born on the 10th, so right here. And so I've already made the block, but I have thought about maybe appliquing maybe a little blue heart on this day right here, just to represent that little Canaan was born on that day. And then here in May, when I make the May block, maybe for baby Ellie, I could do a little pink heart. We've got a couple weddings coming up this year as well, so I could do something special. So I'm really thinking about adding those little features into my temperature quilt, because on somewhere on the quilt I would like it to have 2024 as well. Maybe it's on the label on the back or something, but because 2024 is really special in our family with all the events going on, and so I'm thinking about adding in a couple other little special hints. I do like the color change. Can you tell all the different? This was this was April. Everything from cool to getting warmer. You can see the orangey prints. Those are where it's getting warmer. We had a little bit of every type of weather here in Indiana for the month of April. So that's updates on my temperature quilt. Now, I showed you last week my project that I was working on for a friend using all the embroidered textiles and how I put them together in a quilt. I do have that quilt finished. Well, I have the quilting part done. The quilting is done. I do not have the binding on it, so I decided not to show it this week. I'm going to wait until the binding is on and have that completed, totally finished, so that when I show it, you see the quilting and the binding, and it'll be a complete quilt. So stay tuned for that for next week. And I have one more item to discuss about my personal sewing. So Fat Quarter Shop is doing a quilt along with Quilty Fun. This book was done by Lori Holt 10 years ago, and it was published by It's So Emma, which is the publishing side of the Fat Quarter Shop, and they are doing a quilt along in celebration of 10 years of this book. Now, I had started this quilt several years ago myself. I was doing trying to do my own, like, I guess, row of the month, if you want to call it that, because this quilt is done in rows, and was on the 18th of each month. 18th is my birthday day, and so the 18th of each month, whatever Friday was closest to that, I was sewing on this quilt. I made it about 3 or 4 months, and then I don't know. Life happens, you know, and the wheels fell off the train, I guess you want to say. So I am going to join in with this quilt along because I want to finish this project. So, but the neat thing is I'm already ahead of the game. So there are some instructions on, this is a free PDF download on the Fat Quarter Shop. This is called the Quilty Fun Row Along. And this one gives you all the fabric requirements that you will need. Fat 8s of all different scrappy prints. You can do this totally scrappy. If you've got leftovers from any of the Lori Holt quilt-alongs. You can use those scraps. If you've bought the kits from Fat Quarter Shop to do any of those quilt-alongs, you know they give you plenty of fabric because we mess up and you need those extras sometimes. But I'm using all scrappiness. Now when I first started this, I did not use exclusive Lori Holt fabrics because again this was several years ago. I threw in some others that coordinate. It's all the same color scheme, but it's not quite all Lori Holt fabric, and I am going to finish out the quilt along with all my Lori Holt scraps. But if you need to set aside some fabrics, you'll want to download this so that you can see. You need, it says like 10 fat-8ths of red and then 7 fat-8ths of pink if you want to set out the fabrics ahead of time. I'm kind of choosing mine as I go along. But the second PDF that you can print off is the schedule. So this started on April 26th. It is done by months, so they're telling you which row to work on for that month. So row 1 was the 4 patches, and I'll show you mine in just a minute, was the 4 patches, and that was to do it either you choose. You know, it says February, or it says Friday, April 26th. So whether you say I want to be done with that week, with that row by Friday, April 26th, or maybe you want to start the next one on Friday, February, or April, I don't know why I keep saying February, on Friday, April 26th, whichever way, okay? So the dates are listed by the last Friday of the month is how it's done. So maybe you say, you know, okay, in April I want to work on row 1. You still have time to catch up on that one. We're still in May here, and so there are 2 rows to do for May, and you could finish those by Friday, May the 31st. So if you want to work on it by months, that would be a great way to do that. So let me show you what I have done. And when I started this, I started it just in the same order that they are doing, and that's because they're going right by the book. Lori's books also always have so many fun pictures. She talks about so many things. It's not just pattern. You know, there are so many. It shows her fabric stash, her design boards, sewing machines. She talks about chain piecing, choosing fabrics. I mean, there are so much in here. So the first row are the 4 patches, and it's just they're working through, the schedule follows the book straight through, and that's when I started it. That's how I was doing it as well. So row 1 is the 4 patches. So not necessarily are you starting in the row at the top here and working down, but they are working through the book as Lori wrote the instructions. So the 4 patches is this row down here. And let me show you mine. You're going to get double because I have already joined my 4 patches to the butterfly row, which is row 2 that she has you do. So this is the first 2 months actually put together. So the 4 patches are across the bottom, and that is 1 row by itself for April. And then for May, you're creating the butterflies that are the next row there. There is some sashing between each row, so I've got a white, mine's just a solid white that I'm using. You could use a low volume white. You could change different color if you wanted to. So you can see not all are Lori Holt prints, most of them are. All those little scraps that you save, yeah, see, you can make that pretty 4 patch and join them all together. So you're making them as a 4 patch, but you're joining them all the way along there. And then you're seeing the butterflies. So fun. So that's row 1 and row 2. Row 3, which is the other block for May, is the chubby chevrons, which are right here through the middle of the quilt. And let me show you the ones I have done. I've already joined them all in a row. So not a hard block to make. You're doing easy corner triangles on squares. So this square, and easy corner triangles on each one. Now I'm noticing on the back of this, I did this several years ago, I'm noticing on the back that I did not trim away my fabrics. And let me show you what I mean. So you can kind of see, do you see the green behind that? I don't know if you can see that on camera or not. Because now, let me look at Lori's directions real quick. In Lori's directions, she does not mention anything about cutting that back fabric away. I kind of wish I had, because some of those prints are a little dark behind that white there, and they're going to show through. So what I do when I join easy corner triangles onto a block like this is you have your square and you sew the diagonal across that. I always then press this white piece back to the corner of the background print first before trimming anything away. And the reason is because that square, I know, is already square. And so even if I don't stitch exactly perfect on that diagonal, when I press this back and match that corner of the white directly, so you can see the back, when I press that white part back, I'm going to line it up right with that corner of the green fabric. Then usually, or what I do now, is then I trim that green fabric off. So once it's pressed to the corner, then I will trim off that that green fabric. Now it looks like what I did is I did trim the white print, so you'll have a square, and so you would be pressing back. The one part of your white is already going to be there, and the other part of the white is you'd be pressing it back. So there would be 2 layers of white, and that would have been better than just trimming the middle layer. So it looks like what I did is I trimmed that middle layer of white, and so now the green is showing through. So I should have done either, I should have left the white in between and not trimmed that piece out, or I should have trimmed both the white and the green so that it was just white. And that's what I do now, so that I only have 1 layer of fabric. So these have 2. I have the background and then the white layer that you can see, but I trimmed off the part in between there. So, you know, your skills change as you do more and more. Today I would trim both of those away. Once I press that triangle piece back to the corner, I know that that is square at that point, and I would trim it off, the 2 pieces that were behind there. All of my seams are pressed open just to get rid of any of the bulk that might be there going to one side or the other. So all of those are pressed open. So that's the chubby chevrons, is what that row is called. Now I do have the next 2 rows done, which are for June, the apples and the flying geese, but I'm going to save them for April. So you've already seen my May ones, and they didn't even have to be done until May 31st. So I'm getting, you know, I really haven't even started on this, because what I'm showing you I really did a couple years ago. So I feel accomplished. I feel like I'm ahead of the game. And but I will be joining in on this one, so let me know in the comments if you're joining in on the Quilty Fun Row Along, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. This is a UFO that I've had, you know, obviously for a couple years, so I'm excited to be finishing that. All right, so that is all my personal sewing for this week. Let's start into some customer quilts. All right, one more thing before I start into customer quilts. I forgot I was going to share this with you. So a couple weeks ago, I was sharing with you some of my older projects, and I showed a couple table runners that I had done that had some applique flowers on them, and I said I couldn't remember exactly which books they were from. So what I realized is I did not have those books. I had borrowed them from our public library. I am a big public library fan. One of the things we did as we were homeschooling our kids is we always went to the public library. We always brought in as many books as we can. And so we actually, here in Indiana, I don't know if this is everywhere, here in Indiana you can purchase on a yearly basis what's called a public library access card. So in addition to our own local library, we would purchase this card, which gave us then the ability to go to any library in the state. What we would do is, I'm about an hour away from Indianapolis, and Indianapolis has a huge library system. So sometimes we would actually go all the way downtown to the huge library that's down there. Loved it, loved it, loved it. We would just get lost and browse and look around. It's a huge mini-story library, and I loved it down there. We actually, one time I can remember being there with the kids, and we were checking out books, and it started beeping on us. We had reached the limit of like 125 books or whatever it was. Now, granted, there were 7 kids, and so if each kid, you know, had 10 books, we're going to hit it pretty quick. So anyway, funny story. But so early on in my quilting, again, I showed you that I was using fabrics that I had. I didn't always have the money to purchase patterns or to purchase books, you know, and so when we would go to the library downtown, I would search through the quilting sections and I would bring home books. You get to keep them for several weeks and renew them and renew them and renew them as long as I could, and then I would return them back. But we use the library system a lot, and so I realized after filming those videos where I was showing you those quilts is that those were from books that I had borrowed from the library. So I found those books again at the library and had them delivered or put on hold, and so that I've got these this week. So let me show you a couple of the quilts that were from that. These are Kim Schaeffer books, and so one of the quilts that I showed you was this one, the checkerboard tulip one, if you remember that. That is in this book. So Flowering Quilts by Kim Schaeffer. So that quilt was in this book. And then also the long one, the other one that I showed you a couple weeks ago was this one. This is called Big Happy Flowers Table Runner, and this is also in this book by Kim Schaeffer. So this one, both of these quilts right now we have out in our kitchen. They're very fun for springtime, moving into the summertime, and so just wanted to let you know that that was the book that those were in. There are some really other cute, if you like sort of wonky, whimsical type quilts, that's what Kim Schaeffer has a lot of. Love the flowers. These will all be great for springtime or summertime. Some of these are quilts, some of them are table runners, some are very scrappy. Most of them do include applique, so again, see her flowers. But a very scrappy border with appliqued flowers in the middle. And I'll just, you know, a little bit wonky. I did make this one as well, but I sold that one when we had our pumpkin patch. So you see the elongated log cabin blocks and then just the checkerboard type block on the edges, and that is all appliqued flowers. So this might be a great book if you enjoy flowers, enjoy a little whimsical, a little scrappy look. You've got some richer tones of colors. That's Kim Deal as well. Not Kim Deal, Kim Schaeffer. But Kim Deal does some rich tones as well. But Kim Schaeffer, sort of those same colorways, but more whimsical, more wonky. So you want to get a hold of one of those books. And I also picked up this one. I know I had made some quilts out of this book as well. This is called Skinny Quilts. So these are like bed runners. Maybe if you have a very long table, because most of these measure, like this one is 21 by 77. So if you like something to go across the end of your bed, I have made, I don't think I showed these, but I made a couple of these. Maybe I did. So yeah, I think I did show these, where I made these out of some old knit shirts that we had, some colored ones, and I made one with black sashing and another one with white sashing, just with a little applique, wonky square in the middle there. So this is in the book Skinny Quilts, again, a Kim Schaeffer book. So these were done quite a few years ago, but you may be able to find them at your local library. This was done in 2012. This one, so you know they're 10 years old or so, but you might be able to find those and make some of those quilts. All right, now on to some customer quilts. I have quite a few quilts that have already gone home, and so I'll kind of interchange them because I know not having them here in person is a little more difficult. So I will show a few that have already gone home, and then I'll work on it, or I'll show you some that forgot that one. And then I'll show you some that I have here in person. We'll kind of work back and forth. So this first one is Jennifer's quilt, and this quilt is called 70s Sun, and this is done by the Retro Quilter. So there is a pattern, I've linked the pattern down below, but this is done in all Kona solids. This one measured 72 by 72. It doesn't feel quite square because of that elongated look across the quilt there, but this was a fun one. If this is very retro, very 70s, and the description of the pattern said that she is modeling this off of some of, I mean, you can remember that time period, I'm sure, and the colors and the logos, the motifs, you know, that you might see from that time period. So the pattern says that you could put it together in a short amount of time. This is a lot of big pieces of fabric. There is some curve piecing from what I can tell, but Jennifer said she was a little nervous in putting it together, but once it came together, it worked. You know, I did it. So she used all Kona solids on this one, so all solid fabrics. She did use a minky backing, a brown minky, so it gave it a little bit of weight, a little bit of texture on the back, a soft feel to it. What I want you to see in this one is the pantograph. So this one has a huge amount of negative space, but it's not something that lends itself well to most pantographs. So she had shown me some pictures of ones that she had seen quilted, and a lot of times it was just a wave print going across, like, well, I'll show you some of those. I'll show you on a quilt later in the video of where I used a pantograph that's just a wave going across called Good Vibrations. And that was going to be my, what I was going to fall back on if I couldn't find anything else. So Jennifer had shown me pictures of this quilt way before I had ever received it, just saying, is this something you want to quilt? What are your ideas for it? And I said, can I have a picture of that? I need to stew on this one a little bit. This one's going to be one I want to find the perfect pantograph. And so I don't even remember how I found this pantograph. I think I was looking at some other stuff, or maybe an ad popped up for, you know, I look at a lot of pantographs, so a lot of time on Instagram I'll get in my feed, it'll show me, you know, new pantographs or pantographs on sale this month or things like that. And so I really don't remember how I saw this one, but when I saw this one, I thought, oh, I think that will work really well for this quilt. So similar in feel, that it's kind of moving across the quilt. You could have done straight lines on this one as well, but I just wanted to add a little more texture to it just because we had so much negative space. So this pantograph is actually called Messy Braid. And if you look at it sideways, you can see why it's called that. It kind of looks like somebody's, you know, got a French braid going on in the back of their hair, and it's kind of coming out a little bit, and just kind of the squiggly hair, you know, coming out of the bun. I can see, or coming out of the braid, and I can see where that pantograph is, or the name comes from. But when I saw this one, I saw the waves going across, and almost like solar flare, or almost like heat waves, you know, when you have heat coming off of asphalt or something like that, or you're driving in the distance and it's a hot sunny day and you can just kind of see the heat waves, or heat from an exhaust or something like that, and you just have that little bit of a blur in the, you know, in the air from the heat waves. That's what I saw when I saw this pantograph. And so I sent a picture to Jennifer and I said, this is kind of what I'm thinking, what do you think? And she says, yes, go for it. Now I'll tell you, when I loaded it on the Longarm and I downloaded, or, you know, had the pantograph all set up, I had second thoughts right there at the end. I'm like, this is either going to turn out really well or it's going to be a bust. And I really just about didn't do it and just reverted back to the Good Vibrations one. But I stuck with it, and I am super happy with it. I did not make this super small. I kind of made the scale to go along with the size of this quilt. Again, this is 72 by 72. This is a very large quilt in proportion to one motif. You know, you've got one sun there, and so it's the sun is very big with a 72 by 72. So I didn't want to do a really tight texture, but I wanted to do enough that you got that feel of movement or feel of heat with it. Now the other thing I want you to notice on this is the thread color. The thread color on this is called Celery, and this is a so fine thread. and it's like a light green, like a celery color. And I got the idea from this from Business Buddies group that I'm in, actually on another quilt that I have coming in about a couple weeks that I'm actually going to use this on it too, but a very similar color scheme and idea. And one of my business buddies says you might try celery because it kind of gives a little bit of a gold tint, or gold hint, I want to say. Not going brown where you're going to cover up some of the lighter colors in this, but then on the brown it's not going to look so dark, you know. And I really like the way this turned out. So celery is the color, and it really kind of takes on its own color when you put it on all of the different colors there. So on the red, it looked a little darker. On the white is probably where you can see the true color of it best, but then on the browns it kind of took on more of a brown tint. So a great idea. I appreciate so much my Business Buddies group and how they help me out with decisions like this, but that you might want to try that. So Fine Thread, this is number 449 if you're looking for that. But I was really super happy with the way this turned out, and Jennifer was too. She's like, perfect, perfect. Why did you ever have second thoughts? And you know, you can't go back. So what's done is done. So I was really glad that she liked it, and I really was happy with the end result. So don't always go by the name on a pantograph and to determine, you know, because if you say messy braid, okay, it kind of makes me think of girly or pink feminine. Look at the design, maybe not so much the name. Sometimes the name helps you in finding, if you're doing a search online for pantographs. Sometimes you just got to go and browse, you know, like in a library. You just got to go browse. You don't know what you don't know until you find it. Or in a clothing store, you don't know what you're looking for until you find it. So sometimes pantographs are the same way. So keep an open mind, kind of look through pantographs, not get a certain theme stuck in your mind, and kind of use pantographs in a little different way. So that's Jennifer's quilt. All right, let's move on to the next one. We'll do two more quilts that have already gone home, and then I'll move on to some customer quilts that I have here in with me, and then we'll go back to some pictures. So this one is Cynthia's quilt, and this one she called a jelly roll race. This one is a little more planned than other jelly roll race quilts that I've seen, but obviously it starts with a jelly roll, all in batiks. This one has a very planned feel, and that you almost have like piano key or railroad type look to it. You've got the white at the top and then down the side, and so a little more planned. I don't have the actual pattern for this. I will reach out to Cynthia, or Cynthia, if you're watching, if you could just stick it in the comments, and if you remember the name of the pattern. I know people are going to be asking because other people are going to want to make this beautiful quilt. And so this one measured 51 by 77. Cynthia did use a white minky on the back. Love the texture that you can see on the minky. A nice complement to the darker fabrics on the front, to switching then. You've got that little hint of white on the front, but then switching to the white minky. Wow, it's very rich feeling. It's very powerful. And sometimes matching batiks isn't the easiest unless you have the same line, so I really, really like it. It kept it a lighter feel to this one instead of being the whole thing kind of dark. And really like that the whole gradation of, gradation is how you say it, of the colors from, you've got the white and then you've got the darker shades up in the upper right hand corner, and as it drifts down to the lower left, they're getting lighter. You've got more of, you go from the reds and the pinks on down to the oranges and the bronzes. Very, very pretty. So with the batik quilt, we did go with more of a floral, a fauna type pantograph. This is called Saffron Blossom. And I did reach out to Cynthia and ask her which part of this quilt did she want at the top, because Saffron Blossom, the blossoms do kind of sit in one direction, pointing upwards. And so wanted to be sure that I had it going in the direction that she was planning on, or what her vision of the quilt was, but really like this. I did make it a little small. You can see the jelly roll is a 2.5 inch, and so the saffron blossom fits within that 2.5 inch strip, or just a little bit above it. So did make it kind of small, which makes the texture really, really nice along this one. So that's Cynthia's first quilt. Now here is a picture of Cynthia's second one. Many of you are going to recognize this pattern. This is Bonnie Hunter's mystery quilt from earlier this year. This is Indigo Way, and Bonnie Hunter always does a quilt along through the holiday season, especially to help out those who may not have as much family, may not have a lot of activities. It can be kind of a depressing time of year for some people, and so Bonnie Hunter has challenge people to be a part of her quilt-alongs. This is available free until the quilt-along finishes, and then once it's done, she bundles it up into a pattern. So this pattern is now available on her website, and I have linked that down below. So Cynthia used scraps for this one, blues and browns, very, very pretty. You can tell the intricate piecing, and with Bonnie Hunter's, this is classic Bonnie Hunter. Pieces are small. You're doing a lot of one kind of a block, but you can't tell from creating that one block what it's going to be in the end, and then she has you lay it out. So very intricate, a lot of fun. I've never done a Bonnie Hunter. I love quilting them. I love seeing them done. They've got just the interest in the quilt top is incredible. The skill that goes into piecing them and even planning it, you know, Bonnie's planning it is incredible as well. The pantograph we chose for this one is called Diamond Scroll and Feathers. To me, a very rich looking pantograph. Kind of went along with the intricacies of the quilt, as well as the fabrics that were chosen for this quilt. So if you did red, white, and blue instead of the batiks, I don't know that this pantograph would work for this quilt. But for the batik fabrics, the browns and the blues that Cynthia chose, I think this pantograph adds to that richness, adds to that the majesty, I guess you want to say, of the quilt. I don't know, it just adds that kind of feel. So some feather type looks, some iron scroll type works. We used this same one. Is this the same one we used on that frog quilt a couple weeks ago? So you can see totally different quilts, but how the pantograph fits in with both. I mean, it really went with both types. So some diamonds here, some swirls, some reminds me of ironwork kind of, and nest well together the points into the other parts of the feather type look to it. So just very intricate in itself, the pantograph itself. So I think it went really, really well with this one. This quilt measures 88 by 90, so this is a large bed-size quilt. I like the diagonal feel that you get from the piecing of it as well, and just really like this. So the fabric on the back is also not a batik, I want to say. She did mention this is maybe a Dan Morris print. I don't have an exact name of this fabric or the line or anything, but you might look up Dan Morris if this is something that you like. So this quilt you're going to see laying on a bed or something, and the pattern and the fabrics are going to be the first notice. That pantograph is totally secondary. It's going to be in the background. Not until you get really close are you even going to be able to see the pantograph on this one. So the two work together, but in a quilt like this, the piecing and the fabrics take center stage, and my work is just secondary on this one. Very pretty, Cynthia. You did a wonderful job on these two quilts. And let's move on to Susan's quilts. So Susan's first quilt is using the fruit cocktail line from Fig Tree, and very fun cherries and flowers and florals. This is actually using a jolly bar. So a jolly bar is a 5" by 10" strip. This is something that Fat Quarter Shop has developed, and they have a whole book. They actually have 3, from what I know, jolly bar books. So this book is, or this pattern is from book number 3, and there are 20 quilts in that book. So if you have jolly bars that you've purchased, or if you have layer cakes that you cut in half, you have a 5 by 10" rectangle, and you can use any of a layer cake as well as jolly bars for any of the patterns. You could create your own. You know, it's not a size that you couldn't cut on your own. You have yardage that you want to cut into 5" widths and 10" strips, and you can make your own jolly bar. But it's a pre-cut that Fat Quarter Shop sells if you want your fabrics pre-cut. So this is Fruit Cocktail. This actual pattern is called Step It Up, and it is in Jolly Bar book number 3. So a really quick put together. You're working in blocks from what I can see. So I see, let me see where you can get one. So here's a Jolly Bar piece, a 5 by 10, another one. There is some white, so she might have added some white background. I didn't look at the fabric requirements for this. I can't see the fabric requirements for this specific quilt in looking at the book. I can just see pictures of each of the different ones. So you can see a 5 by 10" here, a 5 by 10" here, and then you join that with a vertical 5 by 10, and every block is that way from what I can see. And then the way you're laying it out, it kind of moves down the quilt in a step fashion, if you want to say, with that white background being the opposite. Also, so separating the colors, if that makes sense. That way you can see the step pattern going down. The background fabric is this red. Love this. Love the red. So there is some of that same fabric in the quilt, but then picking one of the color fabrics from the front and putting it on the back. Love, love, love that. We also did the binding for Susan, and she chose this red polka dot print. Very, very pretty. Love that. So anytime if you're wanting your quilts returned completely finished, where you want the binding done as well, send the fabric along, send the binding along that you've already made, and we will get the binding on there as well. We do, I like to do I don't put my binding on with the long arm. We actually take it off the long arm, and I will piece the binding to the front on my domestic machine, and then actually Maggie, my daughter, who's now working for me, she finishes the binding to the back side with hand stitching. So that's what she does in the evenings when she's talking to her fiance on the phone. So it's a team process there, but we can get those bindings done for you. That way when you get them back, you've got a finished quilt ready to gift or to display, whatever way you are, whatever you want with your quilt. So, pantograph on this one. This one is called Paisley Flower, and I like this. This is a newer one. We've used it a couple times on a couple different quilts. So it has the paisley type look where you've got some loops, a paisley, if you can kind of see this paisley. So paisley is, you know, that, what do you want to say? It's a paisley. I don't know. It's like a loop kind of bubble on the top, but skinny towards the end, almost like a comma kind of. This one you have that paisley loop, but inside they've put what I would say is a feather, you know, one side of a feather. They call it a flower. There are some swirls in here, some tight ones. So I made it about, you know, this is a 5" strip right here, and I made the pantograph about 4 of that, and it stitches out in a row. So this one, and then it comes down. So they almost kind of zigzag across. That way the next row can nest in with it. We did use a white thread on this one. You've got white fabrics here on the front, and white, and all of the other prints even have a white base to them, and so the white thread blended in really well, creates a lot of texture on the white fabric, but blends in with the floral fabric. So cute. Really, really like that one. All right, here is Susan's second quilt. Susan's second quilt is made from a Coriander of Coriander quilts. It's a pattern of hers and also fabric of hers. So the pattern is called Jelly Sticks. This is made using a jelly roll, so a 2.5 inch wide strips. And the fabric line is Buttercup and Slate. So yellows and grays and greens, very, very pretty. Just really like it. So you got some darker grays, some lighter grays, some minty type of greens, and then the yellow, and then some of them are prints with white with the yellow and green flowers on top. Some of them the background is green with the white and yellow flowers. So, you know, all those different combinations. So Jelly Sticks is the pattern. I have linked in the Fat Quarter Shop. They have a downloadable pattern. To get the actual pattern, you may need to go to Corey's site and purchase the pattern. Fat Quarter Shop doesn't have the actual patterns. They just have the downloadable one if you want to do it with that. So not only jelly roll, and then a little bit of fabric for the centers of your block. So here is a block right here. You can see this. So in the middle we have what looks like to me a 5 by 10 inch piece right here in the middle. And then you have smaller rectangles all around, one on either end, short ones along the side, so you can see the block right there. And then the next one is flipped the other way. So let me pull this up a little bit. I think you can see that. So there's a white rectangle in the middle of each block. And then you have the smaller rectangles going horizontally on this side, a little one on the top and a little one on the bottom, same thing on this side. And then the one next to it, the white strip is turned horizontal, and then your other smaller ones there. So these are all 2.5 inches. That's from the jelly roll, and then the additional yardage is the white that you need in the middle. So very pretty. And then you're just alternating those blocks all the way along the quilt. There is a border, the gray border around the edge. That is so pretty. We did the binding on this one as well, and look at this, it's a striped binding. Isn't that pretty? I like that. The backing fabric is really cute. This is a print, but it looks like Grandmother's Flower Garden with the little paper piece type things. Isn't that what it looks like? I love that print. Love that print. So it looks like Grandmother's Flower Garden with the yellow flowers and the gray, and then the white in between each one. But it's a cheater print. It's not actually pieced. Very, very pretty. For the pantograph, we chose what's called Ginger Flower. So you can see it best on the white here, I think. And the flower itself, probably, I don't know, maybe 2 inches is the flower. So you have a flower, it has 5 petals on it, and then it loops 3 times and then goes into the next flower, then loops 3 times and goes into the next flower. We did use a white thread on this one as well, again because we have this white rectangle right here, and I don't want to add color on top of that. You could go gray if you like, a little dimmer. I think if you use a color, it does, it just dims the color of the quilt a little bit, but it really depends. If you were doing a different color theme, maybe red, white, and blue, or if you were doing a more masculine quilt that wasn't florals, you may want to use a light gray or something like that. So it really, I can't say every time you use this pattern that you would use a white, or every time you use white in here you wouldn't use a color. You might. It really just depends. But with these fabrics, the lightness, the airiness, the brightness of the quilt, I think a white thread was the best choice, and it just adds texture on top of the white fabric, and creates all those flowers with all the other flowers. It's very pretty. All right, let's move on to the next one. Right, I'll show you 2 quilts that have already gone home, and then we'll finish out with the rest of the customer ones I have here. So this one is a grandparents panel. This is Marsha's quilt, and this is probably my 3rd or 4th panel of the grandparents one that I have done for Marsha. She changes the other colors around it, so you'll need to go back to some other videos if you want to see other ones of those. Other ones had hearts and things that we did across them, and this one she decided to do all with polka dot fabrics. So these are all scraps from her stash. She just took all different polka dot prints that she had in her stash, and isn't that a neat idea? So all different colors, very scrappy, but all with the central theme of the polka dots. So other quilts that she's done, she actually did all squares around the panel. This one she went with rectangles, and very similar to the Coriander quilt that I just showed you, where you're using, you're putting rectangles together, and one block you're having them horizontal, and the next block you're doing them vertical. That's what Marsha has done in the border of this one. So sometimes the rectangles are horizontal, and then next to it are the vertical ones. There is a small sashing around the panel itself, and then you have the border with all of the polka dot prints. Really cute. The backing fabric was actually a minky, and this is a very low pile minky. I even asked Marsha to make sure, is this really a minky? Because when I trimmed the quilt, it shed like a minky did. The feel of it almost felt like a very soft, satiny flannel is what it felt like. It wasn't as thick as other minkies, so the pile was very low. But she said it was priced with all the other minkies, and it acted like a minky, but just a very, very thin one. So very slick and very shiny and satiny feel to it. Very soft. It'll be really nice for a baby blanket. But it was a blue with white rings, I guess, or polka dots on there. So the whole theme, because we had polka dots and we had the circle theme, we went with Apricot Moon's Bubbles print. I like this pantograph because it's not fussy. The bubbles all overlap each other, and so even when you bring this design into your computer program, I bring the lines up enough that the rows actually overlap. And so when I stitch out one row, my next one, when it stitches, it's actually coming up into the row above it and actually stitching over that, so that I don't get a separation, a negative space, in between the 2 rows. I actually cut so that one row is stitching over the row above it just a little bit. And I try, when I'm doing that, when I'm bringing it into the program, to have it overlap enough that it looks very uniform with the way the bubbles overlap in that in the one row. So if you look at the one row, and the bubbles overlap maybe an inch or maybe, in half an inch. So when I'm bringing that other row in, I want those bubbles to be about the same. So not just barely touching, but actually overlapping so that it all looks uniform. That's my whole job in doing the digital pantographs, is that I want the whole quilt to look uniform. A lot of times when you're doing hand guided, that's one of the hardest things to do, especially over a large quilt, is you may start out with a meander, on the top of it, and it would be really tight, and then the longer you go, you get tired and it's a little bit bigger. And so keeping that uniformity over a whole quilt can be difficult hand guided. It takes a lot of practice. And when I'm doing digital pantographs, I want that uniformity. So I always try to make my sizing between rows to be similar to the way the sizing is in a row, if that makes sense. Sometimes there are times when I don't. I have done Baptist fan, or like the mini City of Fountains or something like that are a Baptist fan type look, and it gives a different look to it if you separate the row a little bit. Not huge, but just a little bit. You get a little different look to the pantograph. But most of the time I try to keep my sizing between rows the same as it is in the row, just so that you keep that uniformity. I don't like to be able to see where one row stitches and then the next row stitches. I want it to be intertwined enough that you can't tell easily where one row is and where the other row is. So Marsha's quilt is really cute. I do have a second quilt of Marsha's, and let me show you this one. Marsha's second quilt is a pattern from the Quick as a Wink book by Fabric Café. So if you're familiar with that, that's the 3-yard quilts. A lot of quick quilts that are really cute, really cute. There are so many. If you're looking for a quick graduation gift, which is what Marsha was doing for this one, choose your color scheme, whether it's the college they're going to, whether it's their high school colors or whatever. These are great graduation gifts. The quilt measures 62 by 80, so a nice size. Marsha did add just one border around it, and I really don't know from the pattern if that was in the original pattern, but if you need it bigger, you can add more fabric, you know, more borders around to create it bigger. But I like this print. I like how you're basically making 2 different blocks, and one of them's just a large rectangle or a large square with the novelty fabric, if that's what you want to use, or it could be a solid color. And then your second block alternated and turned the different ways gives that illusion that there's that black square is behind it. So a quick one to finish, and comes together really nicely. So obviously this is going to someone with an Ohio State degree in their future, it looks like. And so for this one, Marsha just chose a very simple Good Vibrations pantograph. And this is where I mentioned earlier in the retro sun quilt, do I do just a wave pattern? And that's what this is. The theme of this one is carried in the fabrics. This keeps it very neutral in a way, you know, not, it's just utilitarian. It gets the quilt put together, a nice design, but nothing fancy. It's not something, oh, hey, look at the quilting on this one. This is, you know, the fabrics carry the theme in this one, and it'll be a nice gift. So the backing fabric was also Ohio State yardage, and you could do this, I mean, nowadays they're every team imaginable, every sport imaginable, anything you would want you could find for this one. So really, really pretty. We did use a light gray on this one, and so even though there is a lot of white background fabric, this is one, the quilt's a little darker. It's not the light bright prints. The reds and the blacks are a little darker, and so the gray thread, even across the white, just adds a lot of texture, doesn't take away from the feel of the quilt. It's not overpowering, but it does add just a little bit of color onto the white, and it works really well. So you can play with thread color and see what you like best, and I think it depends on the quilt top and who it's made for and the fabrics that are there. This one's not floral. It's, you know, the print, and so I think a colored thread works fine with this one as well. So, all right, let's move on to DeeDee's quilt. DeeDee's quilts are always so much fun. She is bright and cheery and loves the, I like the wonkiness, just the intricacies, the modern feel to her quilts, and always so fun and bright in the cheery colors. So this one is, DeeDee said this was a class in an abstract quilt. She didn't have the name of the teacher, doesn't remember. But this almost gives to me the feel of like broken glass, or, you know, glass shards laying around. The greens and the pinks, actually the fabrics, I don't know, she didn't tell me the fabric line, but pinks and the purples, this is done, don't know if, I would assume it's pretty like improvised quilting or piecing type thing. You're just laying different fabrics together. I don't know if there's a certain pattern. but really cute. So the background print is a fun multicolored, so from a distance it, you know, kind of looks, you know, it's a low volume in some ways, but when you get in close, there's lots of bright colors, lots of little squares, oblong squares. They're like rounded corners. It's not straight, but all different colors in there. And then look at the backing. This is a green minky that has like a rosette type design on the back of it. So very soft. Again, it's a little thinner nap, but it has that rosette type of look to it. So the quilting. DeeDee gave me my choice what I wanted to do. So what I did on this one, kind of going with the squares in this background print, there were a little bit of rounded corners, all different sizes. I went with a design called Cool Beans. And so this one creates by crossing over itself and then doing the rounded edges. It kind of reminded me of this same print. But by crossing over itself, it's making little squares, little rectangles, if you can see in here. It's creating those same sort of shapes that were in this fabric right here. So it's very noticeable on the pinks. You can see the design on the pinks. On this very busy background fabric, you're really not seeing much of it at all. And we did use a green thread on this one. So the backing is green. The prints are very bright, and this isn't the same green that the celery one. This was a brighter green, more of a minty type green, and it really goes along with the whole theme of the quilt. I know DeeDee enjoys color. I know she enjoys bright and striking, bold things, and so I know that for her, she was going to love this. And so all of the bright prints and the Cool Beans, I made this very large at times. For this quilt, I would say is sort of a medium. You know, here's one little section, very easy to stitch out. Again, it nests very well together, the different sections of it. And just a fun one. I think this went really well with the background fabric. So when you're choosing pantographs, sometimes I'm looking at fabric like I did on this one. Sometimes I'm looking at the design of the quilt. All different things. And also when you're using a textured minky fabric where there's already a print, I try not to do anything too intricate that's going to compete with that design that's in here. So this one was little rosettes, and I just felt like the straighter lines, you know, a little more open, wasn't going to take away. You still get the feel of the rosettes. I just didn't want to do something too much that's going to, you've already got so much texture here on the minky with one of these that I don't need to add a lot of more texture on that part. So very fun. This quilt is not very big. This one measures 38 by 44, so a nice little throw or a nice little baby blanket for the floor, something like that. All right, I have another one by DeeDee. DeeDee's second quilt is called Wonk Around the Block. This is by Lisa Rubel of QuiltyZest, and I have linked that down below there. There is a pattern for this, but I think she also did a block of the month maybe for this one. So this quilt, again, this is DeeDee all over. She loves these bright colors and a little bit of a wonkiness, and just so fun. Love the black background. All of the squares are little different. You got flying geese units. You have a wonky star here in the middle. The blocks around the edge. Again, kind of a improvised quilting a little bit with the black across the square, and then so it creates this feel like it's a ribbon running down the quilt, but they're just opposite blocks. So here we've got a colored background with a black strip across, and then we have the black background with a colored strip across, and moving down the quilt like that, it makes this feel like there's a ribbon running down the side of it or something like that. So you have some wonky type blocks here, and then some straight blocks, some other, so a little bit of everything. I like this, the rich colors with the black background. I think it's really pretty. So in deciding, let me show you the back. The backing, she chose this circle play. This comes in a variety of different colors. This is the black one with the multicolored circles. This is called Circle Play, and this is a wide backing in 108 inch. And I used the inspiration of that backing fabric to pick the Pantograph. So this is Christie's Crop Circles, and I talked about this one on the carousel quilt last week or the week before. And the carousel quilt was from Primitive Gatherings pattern, so much more traditional feel. This one, I use the same pantograph, but I think it creates a whole different feel on this one. So really neat how you can use one pantograph for something traditional as well as something a little more modern. A lot of negative space with all the black here, and so I wanted something that was going to create texture. I wanted something that was geometric in a way, but a little wonky in a way as well. There are no circles in the pattern itself, and so, but with the circles on the back, I thought that was a nice complement to the front. So we still have a geometric feel with the circles, but not competing with the design on the front. So if you chose something square, it was gonna, it's not going to match up with the wonky squares that are on the front. But this just keeps a really modern feel to this quilt. We also use the same mint green thread that I used on DeeDee's other quilt on this one as well. I like the color combination there. It just added it just added to the feel, the color striking of this quilt, and I just really like it. I love the texture it creates on the black. I'll pull it in here a little more so you can see. Love the texture it creates on that black. I just, this isn't the kind of quilt that I would hang in my house because it doesn't match my decor, but I like this. I like how a quilt comes together, and I know DeeDee's going to be thrilled with this. I like the texture that it created in the negative spaces. I like the color of thread. This is one time when I think a colored thread is essential. I just think it really, really adds to it. I'm not a big fan of variegated thread because a variegated thread, you lose it in some colors and then you lose. I'm not a big fan of variegated. I like the one consistent color in there, but I think this added so much to the negative space that was there. So again, we talked about this one last week or the week before, where it has a Baptist fan feel and that the circles nest up against each other. That's where the term crop circles comes in. But the circles are cut flat on the ends of them. So I like this. I think this was a match made in heaven. I just think it went together really, really well. Love it, love it. All right, let's move on. All right, the last quilt I'm going to share with you today is Jill's quilt, and Jill said that this was a quilt that she saw on Pinterest, and so she recreated it herself. This is all 6-inch blocks set in a pleasing design where you have the diagonal in the reds, and the setting is diagonal so that you have the blacks and the grays and the lights, and she did a wonderful job, very square. Just a really nice, love all the prints, I love all the differences. I like the red, I really like the red. And she did a pieced backing. Let me flip this over so you can see the piece backing. So you can see on the backing she used a lot of smaller strips for a middle section here. So the very middle part, a lot of smaller strips, and then her strips get larger and larger as it's going down, and that way up as well. And then on either side she did bigger panel pieces on either side. So On the sides, the rectangles more are elongated this way. Reds and the grays, a lot of the same prints that are on the front. I really like how she did the backing. It worked really well. A nice complement to the front, which is all squares, and here we switched to rectangles. I think it's really nice. The Pantograph, she said either a Baptist fan or a woven wind, and I thought the woven wind was a better choice for this one. Very similar feel in both of them, and then you have the roundness of it. I did make this fairly small. I mean, the woven wind is probably only 2.5 inches, I say, each little one. This does nest very well in together. Maybe you can see it on the red here. So only about 2.5 inches if you want to say measure it. It does curve, so it's hard to measure that. Did a light gray, maybe a medium gray thread on this one with all the grays. That worked really well. And this created a lot of texture because we have a lot of blocks. We have really pretty fabrics in here, but I thought by shrinking it down some, it creates a lot of texture, a lot of interest. We're adding a little bit of a curve with that woven wind Pantograph, with all of the squareness of the design on the front, adding just a hint of a little bit of a curve, but nothing floral, nothing in that way, but just a little bit of a design element there that really added to the quilt top. I think this is really, really pretty. This quilt is very, very large. It measured 97 by 103. Took a long time to quilt this one out, especially because of the density that I was using that woven wind Pantograph. I did have the question recently, what's the largest quilt width-wise that I can go? And so with my machine, I'm on a 12-foot table. About the widest I can go is 120 on your quilt top. And then, because then I need, the extra on either end or on either side. So, an extra, so it'd be like 128 for your backing fabric. That would give me enough. But the machine has to have some clearance on either side. Just because you can't stitch all the way to the end of the bar. Your machine has to have some clearance there. So a quilt top that's about 120 inches wide and about that long as well would be probably the maximum that I could do on a 12-foot table. So that's Jill's quilt. Love it. It's so pretty. Again, quilting doesn't have to be hard. 6-inch squares, you lay it out in a pleasing pattern. Doesn't have to be hard. Very fun. All right, that is all for this week. If you are in need of Longarm quilting services, my information is down below. I hope you will get in contact with me. There's a prep instructions that you can download, so it gives you all the information on how to get how much backing fabric you need and how to get your quilt ready for shipping, how to get your quilt ready to be long-armed. All that information is down below. Would appreciate it if you enjoy my videos to subscribe and to like them. That lets me know that you enjoy this, and it also lets YouTube know that you enjoy this and can suggest it to other quilters who may be interested in finding the perfect Pantograph for their next quilt. So I will see you back here next week because every quilt is worth finishing. Bye-bye.